Hello and welcome to live post-match reaction to the Jaguares versus the Hurricanes, brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, a podcast, a YouTube channel, a Twitter Twitter account, and a website. Just search for DrivingMaul and you'll find it. And the Jaguares came up short, finishing the game at 9:34. So yes, the Hurricanes got the big expected win, and after a weekend where a lot of pickers have had struggles, this one was an easy one. Joining me is the man who has been doing a live commentary on the Tribe Sports app. It's Ryan. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad. I'm a little bit sleep deprived after a long night of sport, but I'm glad to be with you, and I can catch up on sleep on Monday.
There's you can always sleep when you're dead and all that kind of stuff. I can see you're still in your Aces cricket cap. So still, yes, still a what's the word? Still a traitor to the cause. But apart from that, we're all good. So turned out to be an easy win, but it was only 6-12 at half time. So it wasn't all one-way traffic.
No, not at all. And I think really on the balance of play, the scoreline just doesn't reflect the game at all. It was a pretty scrappy, pretty sloppy game, lots of errors, pretty untidy at set piece. And I think really the difference in the end was that the Hurricanes were able to finish enough of their opportunities, whereas the Jaguares couldn't turn what pressure they had into points.
Yep, and we saw that, and I think that we had a little microcosm of the game in the first few minutes. We had a standard exit from the Canes off the initial kickoff. The Jaguares win their line out, then they win the scrum the Canes lose lose a scrum, and yeah, neither of the teams set piece functioned at all well today. No,
and it seemed to be that the team that either had the put in or had the throw in was, it became a lottery as to whether they were going to get their own ball, which really makes it hard for a team to kind of set up a platform to attack, particularly inside the opposition half. But you're right that the start of the game, I mentioned in my coverage that it was a sloppy start and it was untidy, and in reflection, it was a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and do you think it was a bit macho of Brad Shields to go for the scrum rather than the line out when he had that option at the very beginning?
It's easy in hindsight to say they made the wrong call, but
it certainly looked like they were trying to lay down a marker and say, hey, we're not going to get bullied at scrum time. We know you're an Argentinian side and all the kind of stereotypes that go around that. But unfortunately, it didn't pay off for them in that situation.
Yeah, perhaps you're right. And the team that laid down the marker in the end was the Jaguares. But
yeah, one of the things I found interesting early on was that both sides were happy to play on their own 5-meter line. So if they were being pressured and the ball was turned over, rather than quickly exiting and getting the kickoff, they would have one or two plays to see if they could get the counter going, and then they would kick back. Both these sides wanted to try and counter, even if the handling wasn't up for it today.
Yeah, I guess that's probably emblematic of the type of style that both these teams do look to play. They're happy to kind of feast on scraps and try and play off the counter and see if they can break a team open off turnover ball. Perhaps you're right, though, that there wasn't that adjustment to the fact that, neither team were able to handle the ball. Perhaps today's not a day for trying to counter and go 95 meters. Let's settle things down. Let's go to touch. And let's put pressure on the set piece, which both teams are able to do. So, yeah, probably one of those things where the teams, perhaps early season, they've got kind of a mantra for playing their own style and just weren't able to adjust despite the game conditions or the game flow telling them otherwise.
Yeah, and ironically, for two teams that do, as you say, like to live off scraps, happy to counter-attack, the first try came off basically set-piece ball. We had the scrum, Lamapi carrying it up. We had quick recycling, and then a lovely inside ball to Gareth Evans, who put I've gone blank. The winger away. Pardon? Ben Lamb. That's it. Yeah, Ben Lamb away for an easy try. And a few handbags afterwards. Do you think he was that he was committed to the tackle and was allowed? That was okay, or do you think that was a bit of a cheap shot from the Jaguares player?
Oh, I think it's one of those ones where, particularly at that stadium where the hoardings are so close to the dead ball line and the in-goal areas are so close as well, that, it kind of ends up over the hoardings and it looks a lot worse than it is. I think he probably was committed. It wasn't a great look anyway, and I thought in the end they probably handled it quite well. But yeah, I think things look worse when they kind of spill over over the hoardings and get a bit closer to the grandstand. Not that they were ever in the grandstand, but
no, it's really, and yeah, I think it was fine. I think Ben Lamb should have put the ball down earlier if he didn't want to take a bit of contact. If you're gonna
right.
If you're going to eke out every single millimetre to try and get under the posts, which is understandable with Brad Barrett being your kicker, that the opposition is going to have a go and try and stop the try if you're not going to, if you're going to give them the opportunity to. So I think you should have put it down earlier. And so a topic we'll probably get onto later because is that TJ decided to actually, no, let's do it now. TJ straight in there afterwards, pushing and shoving. Later on in the game, gets told off by the ref for mouthing off and for celebrating too much in Jaguares' faces. Has TJ started to go too far and needs to sort of rein it in a bit, his language?
It's one of those tricky ones because that's the kind of player he is, and if you take that edge off him or if you try and curb that, do you then impact his performance? Guys like that kind of sail close to the wind and try and get up for a game. At times, there's no doubt that he goes beyond what he should be allowed to, particularly the way he speaks to referees. But I think he tries to bring a certain intensity to the game, and he certainly he can be pretty vociferous in his celebrations.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I love the energy that people like him, that people like like Aaron Smith bring. The how excited they are when they score and pieces. I think Aaron Smith sails the right side of the line and doesn't push it, where I think TJ unfortunately goes a bit too far, and particularly as you say, the way he deals with referees. In this game, the referee was like TJ, and TJ just ignores him and walks away, and the referee goes number 9, and he turns around and then pays attention. I'm sure he knows his own name better than he knows his number, so there's no excuse there for not taking So not so much the in the face things with the players, and that's part of what it is. And if you get called up by the ref, dial it back a little bit. I don't really mind that side of it. I think it's how he talks to the refs and how he ignores the refs when it suits him that he should be pulled up on. But anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. I think we've made our point there. The Jaguares clearly in that first half thought that they could keep in touch, or at least by penalties. They missed a long range one, and then on 40 minutes, and then eventually the pressure told, because on 60 minutes they got a second penalty and they knocked it through the posts. They had a good chunk there of possession and territory, Jaguares, but they just didn't seem to be making the line breaks.
No line breaks, and they never really managed to string concerted amount of phases together. There was, I think, off the top of my head, maybe only a couple of times through the game where they were able to get into double-digit phases, and those times came towards the back end of the game. That first half, it seemed that neither side could really hold onto the ball for a long period of time. And some teams need that to create the space out wide and to create those holes. they had a couple of little half breaks. I thought Batista Escura, the second five, made inroads a couple of times, and Bertrand looked incisive running off his forwards, but yeah, they just weren't able to do enough with their ball in the end.
Yeah, too many errors. They would get a few phases and then they would knock it on, or they get territory and then they would get turned over. It was too error ridden, unfortunately. And then, as we've seen before, Lamape sees a gap and shows some fantastic power to get himself over after being released. I think it was by Ardi Surveyor for the second try.
Yeah, really neatly worked move actually in midfield with Riccatelli running a decoy. I just gave Escura some props for his work on attack, but he made a horrible defensive read to come in on Riccatelli. That opened up the hole for Lamapi, and as you said, Ardi Savia popping a neat pass to him. And then you just got to like the way that saw the gap, saw that the line was there for the taking, and just pins his ears back and goes for it. Because there are a couple of defenders on the line, but poor old Nicolas Sanchez had no chance 2 meters out.
No, and there are times when you want your try-scoring players, your power players, to be a bit selfish in the best sense of the word, and to go for it. And that was one of those where you wanted to. It was very crowded around him. He wasn't getting any passes away, but there was a channel for him to run down and say, "Yep, you just pin your ears, go for it, back yourself." And it's great to see that he's got that kind of confidence early in the season. We finished with a penalty to the Jaguares as they pressured the Canes, and basically it looked like they were going to get some more points there, but they just ran out of time to exact that pressure and had to take the 3 in the end. And what
you go?
No, after you, because I'm going to something else.
I think that's almost a little bit of credit to the kind of the professionalism of the Hurricanes, understanding the game situation, realizing that the Jaguares were building a little bit of pressure close to the line, and you almost just say, look, we'll concede 3 happily and go to halftime at 12-6.
Yeah, there was, and I think I wish I'd noticed it down now, because the Jaguares gave away a few penalties in the second half, but they were very good early doors. And I know I saw at one point it was 0-3 penalties to the Hurricanes, and the end score was 11 penalties against the Jaguares, 15 against the Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes also picked up a yellow card as well. So the one thing we've kind of sort of had troubles with the Jaguares in the past about is their discipline, but they held it together in this game.
Yeah, well, all of their locks stayed on the field, so that's always a good sign. Yeah, and they have to. I mean, the kind of penalties they concede just don't help you win rugby games. They either release pressure that you've built, or they put yourselves under pressure most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things that I was going to bring up was in that first half, the tackle percentage for both the sides was in the high 70s towards 80s. The Jaguares fell back to 58% tackle success rate overall in the game, which shows you that in that second half, they probably missed as many tackles as they made. And that is why I think that's one of the contributing factors as to why the game fell away from them in that second half, was that they allowed too many line breaks. They missed too many tackles. And you had times where Julian Surveyor got through 4 players for one of the tries, and I know there was a lot of flack for Julian on Twitter, but the little cross kick he got, and then they say, "Oh, Julian knocked it on." It's like, hang on a second, Barrett's gone and kicked this one way too long. It's going out on the full. Julian hasn't got a hope in beep of keeping that one in. That's not his fault. It was today. He had an okay game. I'm not saying it was great, but I think the service to him today was a bit poor at times.
Well, I think I made the comment at halftime in response to one tweet that someone singled out Julian Savia. It's like, well, what about the other 30 players on the field that were struggling to hang on to the ball? I mean, it was a day where guys were struggling hold on to possession, and for whatever reason that was, whether there's humidity and a lot of sweat on the ball, or maybe too much Vaseline out there, I have no idea. But Julian did some good stuff in that second half. That the run you referred to was vintage Julian, and it led to a try. So.
Yeah, it did. Actually, there's a couple of these I should cover off on first. The Canes had all that territory in the initially in the second half, and then as soon as the Jaguares got down the other end of the pitch, one of the front row came offside and gave away a soft penalty that allowed the Jaguares to get the scoreboards ticking over and got themselves up to 9-12 and got themselves as close as they were going to get as they got in the whole game. And then immediately after that, the Canes get a penalty in front of the posts or just slightly to the side at the other end, and they went for the corner and it didn't work out. And I was thinking, hang on, you've just given up 3. You've got an easy 3 points here. I know the Hurricanes don't like taking kicking penalties, but at that point of the game, I think they made a bad choice there. I think they should have taken the 3, put the lead back out over a kick again, and restarted. If you get cheap points, especially straight after someone scored against you, I think you should take them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point that you bring up there about getting them straight back, when it's so quick after a penalty to have a chance to hit straight back, you're just basically cancelling out scores. And I think when you're in front, that makes sense. But it's the Hurricanes' way, and they'll back themselves. And I guess when they've been so successful, you kind of have to sort of go with them. But yeah, on that occasion, I agree. I agree with you.
I get where you're coming from. I do think, though, and this is something I'll come on to. Sort of. Well, actually, let's do it now. I think they're a bit too formulaic in some ways. So in this case, this is what we do, even though our line out is falling apart at the moment. They lost 4 lineouts. No, sorry. It says they only lost 1 lineout, but I'm sorry. It feels like they lost a lot more than that. There were overthrows. The lineout wasn't functioning well. The maul wasn't done. They got 1 decent maul all game. Maybe they got 1. So kicking to the corner, I think didn't take into account the game situation. And then again, 3 minutes before the end, they have a penalty in front. Bradshaw stops it. Has to basically walk to the sideline nearly to be told what to do, and then takes the kick for 3. So that kind of decision making, I think the players need to learn to be more self-sufficient, adapt to gameplay, and make their own choices and not rely so much on the coaches.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think this is a trend across world sport, that players are almost overcoached. And I mean, I'm not going to sort of go into it, but I follow a couple of guys on Twitter who follow the NBA heavily, and they say the same thing. Guys have things drummed into them. This is what we do. This is what we do. And then in certain game situations, you need to go against that. You need to adapt to the situation and adjust. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, the modern athlete just doesn't seem to do that. They seem to go with, this is what the coach says, this is what we're going to do. So, yeah, it's a great point. Formulaic's a great way of describing it, because these guys just have certain things drummed into them, and they just back that to the hilt.
Yeah, and if we run through the tries from the Canes, we've got the first one was off the back of a scrum that got Ben Lam the try. I can't remember the play before the Lemon-Mappy one, but I think that was a line out. We then had the typical, what I've put down here is the typical New Zealand try. First phase off a scrum, get Julian in space. He bashes three or four players. You flood that 5 metre channel with players, support players you go through. So again, first phase, straight off set play. We then have another one where the Jaguares 15 is up in the line. So it's a grubber through. Again, first phase off a line out there. And in fact, I think the only try that wasn't basically off first phase was from the kickoff, which I guess you could call as being first phase as well, where Thompson made that break. Otherwise, the other 4 tries were basically effectively backs moves off the back of first phase play, not the broken field play that we, or counter-attacking that we kind of recognise or associate with New Zealand teams?
Yeah, I think the second one probably was the only one where there was a bit of sustained pressure. They worked off the line out, crashed to the midfield, kept going same way, and then brought it back into midfield where Lamapi was able to make the break. But yeah, I think it's quite funny too when you think about the game and the way that teams struggled at set piece, that the Hurricanes were then able to use set piece to launch their attack from. It kind of went against the grain of the game. But I guess it's a sign for the Hurricanes that if they can get set piece right, that they do have a back line that can fire. Yeah.
That's very true. And it's one of the things that if you were to go through and say, okay, when did the Hurricanes have the most sustained pressure of most sustained territory? It was beginning of the second half. When did they score their points? Not at the beginning of the second half. They scored their points not when they had sustained pressure, not when they had sustained territory. It was seeing the moment I'm not sure about seeing the moment, or running a set play in the right part of the field that got them the scores on the whole, which again is part of that formulaic thing that I'm sort of picking up on here for the Canes this season. Maybe it's early doors; they're still getting used to playing with each other again. I don't know, but I just think that's where we might be going with this sort of thing. It's something we also see from Scotland, in that we see a lot of people blame Scotland for not earning the right to go wide in their first game against Wales, but if you go watch how they played England, it was first phase moves, they go wide, and it's not so much about earning the right to go wide, it's about execution of the passes and getting your running lines right rather than earning the right anymore. I think we don't see players getting sucked into rucks. We don't see those big overlaps being created by earning the right anymore. And that's I think that to me that phrase is cliched and dead.
Yeah, and I think you look at a matchup like today where if you were to say, where are the Jaguares' strengths, their loose trio are probably three of their better players. So if you can shift that point of contact away from set piece, away from scrum, so it's not Gareth Evans cutting off the back and taking it into the loose trio, but it's getting it wide and targeting their outside backs and their centres. So perhaps there was a little bit of matchup dependent tactics there as well.
And if you've got a named a player there who had a fantastic first half, at least didn't hear so much about him in the second half, but Gareth Evans. I mean, at one point he had the most meters made running and had made the most tackles for the Hurricanes. And he had a blinder today.
Yeah, and I think in your rugby chat, was it last week or the week before, you kind of said, who might be the breakout New Zealand players, and he was someone I threw out there. I think moving to the Hurricanes and getting an opportunity at 8, if he can stay healthy, which I think has been the biggest problem for Evans in his time at the Highlanders and with Hawke's Bay this season or last season. He's got a real opportunity to put a case forward as an up and coming number 8.
And as Rugby Numbers pointed out, he's Welsh qualified, so could have admittedly he's got a 2-year contract, but if he doesn't get recognition or has 2 good years, then there was a suggestion of, hey, would he be heading overseas to Wales on a nice contract? He had a better first half. He faded in the second half. Or he was substituted. I can't remember when he went off. But
well, he took 10 minutes off when Ben May got binned, so that he was the sacrificial lamb. If he's Welsh qualified, I think Hansen better give him a cap this year. Just 10 minutes off the bench at some point. That'll put an end to that.
Yeah, apparently his brother picked up an All Blacks cap, which stopped him from going overseas. And a lot of this, as we say, was down to the Jaguares couldn't break the Hurricanes' defence. They didn't really get many line breaks. You've got to put that down to players like Riccatelli, who racked up 12 tackles. Brad Shields racked up 11 tackles. They both put in good shifts, as did Ardy Surveyor as well, with 7 in there. Now, Has Arnie Surveyor changed his game plan from being a free running 7 to a snaffling 7? Because I've seen him playing much tighter nowadays. He seems to be getting much more involved in these breakdowns, and I didn't see him make any sort of breaks or doing that much carrying.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be that component there, but obviously that's kind of an area that he, I think, needs to focus on if he's going to challenge Sam Cane for the All Black 7 role. Today's game probably didn't suit kind of the free ranging Lucy. As you pointed out, most of their attacking stuff came off set piece rather than sort of broken play. And the one time he did pop up with a key moment, a key pass, was that one try off some sustained pressure where they kind of lost their shape a little bit. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of his progress this year and how he develops that sort of feature type component of his game. And given the new laws, I don't know if it's even worthwhile sort of focusing on being a feature. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I still can't see him challenging Sam Cane as a starting 7, but he certainly brings something to that All Black squad, even as an impact forward. So
it does. I think he'll make a very good bench player because he can also cover 8 if needed, which he did last season. So I think as an important part of the squad, I think he's there. But as you say, probably not as one of the starters. Can't see him getting past either Sam Cane or Kieran Reid at number 8 either, and he's not really a 6 in the kind of mould that the All Blacks need. So, any other players you want to sort of pick out and talk about in the game, or shall we move on to sort of how we see these teams going for the rest of the season?
I thought both Barretts were reasonably quiet today in terms of their influence on the game, which is, with Geordie just making his comeback, perhaps understandable, and I think they subbed him off after 50 minutes.
Well, I'm going to disagree on Brody because Brody. No, anyway,
Geordie,
the older one. Bowden, there we go. Bowden Barrett and Brodie Barrett. There you go. Yeah, hey, if you went and had a Brodie Barrett, imagine how good he would be. A Retallick Barrett combo. Anyway, sorry, just go off on a slight tangent. I thought that Bowden Barrett is covering. He saved at least 2 tackles using his pace, and I think he was influential there. His kicking, he didn't get it right a couple of times, but you could see when they put that grubber through for Arso to score. That was about the 2nd or 3rd time they tried that play. They practiced or spotted midweek that the fullback comes up into the defensive line a lot. So I think he pulled the strings in a kind of way. Maybe not his characteristic breaking play that we've seen in previous years, but I think I still think Bowden was controlling. It was a sort of calming influence outside of TJ's scurrying around.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we expect so much of Bowden Barrett, and we know how much speed he's got and his ability to break the line, but yeah, he did control the game well. So I'll give you that. But perhaps just kind of what our expectations are. We didn't really see the speed and the scintillating breaks that he's capable of making. So
I mean, why can't the double World Player of the Year just grab every single game by the scruff of the neck and own it? Right. But you're right with Geordie Barrett. He was quieter, and I think part of that also, as the commentator said during the game, was that the Jaguares really weren't kicking much to him to give him that counter-attacking opportunity, which is probably wise when you look at the Hurricanes back line. That you don't want to have players like Sevilla, Geordie, Arso, Lamapi, Proctor counter-attacking. You want to, you just don't give them that opportunity, and we saw that in some ways in the fact that the Hurricanes ended up having 12 lineouts. So yeah, kick the ball out, don't kick it in field against the Hurricanes. That's the pro tip from head coach DrivingMaul.
Well, I thought actually, like the first half in particular, and I think to a lesser degree the second half as well, and there wasn't a lot of the kind of aimless kicking or the long games of force back that you see in some of these Super Rugby games. And so even though the game was a little bit scrappy and sloppy and there were lots of errors, it felt entertaining because the ball was kind of in play a lot and there was stuff happening all the time. So, and I think I put that down to the fact that we didn't have the aimless kicking and we didn't have sort of long passages of play where you just had kind of crash it up, go nowhere for 10 phases. So it always felt like something was happening, even if what was happening wasn't very good, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, totally does.
Kind of a hectic first half more than anything.
Yeah, it was. So going on from here, obviously this is 3 losses on the bounce now for the Jaguares. Bottom, lower Africa division yet again for them.
Well, they won't finish ahead of the Kings this year because they're gone. So I think they're going to struggle to get out of the cellar. It's a shame, really, because I thought week 1 they weren't too bad. They were encouraging against the Lions. The Lions are a class outfit, and they showed glimpses that maybe they could be competitive. And then the last 2 weeks, I think they've been pretty disappointing. So, yeah, they've got problems.
They do. I've not seen the Bulls-Lions game yet. And from what I hear, it's the score flatters the Bulls with some late scores. But having seen the Bulls against the Hurricanes, having seen, I know there's a lot of expectation around the Sharks, and obviously we know the quality of the Lions, that it could come down to Stormers versus the Jaguares. And the Stormers, obviously, as we've seen with their scrap with the Waratahs, is they're not going to be easy to beat. They're going to fight it out, even if they did come up short against the Crusaders. But the Crusaders are a class above most other teams. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough year for the Jaguares, I think. Onto the Canes, then. Yep, they've managed to bounce back after a poor performance, but still not looking slick. But that defence of theirs is going to keep them in a lot of games, though.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how they scrambled today. The times that the Jaguares did look like maybe they could open them up, just guys popping up to make tackles, the ability to slow down ruck ball, and really force the Jaguares to reset. And the Jaguares want to play up tempo. They want to play off quick ruck ball and kind of keep the ball moving and try and challenge you when you're stretched. And the Hurricanes just didn't allow that today. So if they're going to be that good defensively, then they are going to be a challenge to beat. Yeah, but just too many errors, and that set piece concerns me. Obviously, if they can get Coles back, that'll be a huge boost. But yeah,
I think May had a poor game today. Got himself yellow carded. Wasn't strong in the scrum. So yeah, that's some. They definitely need some work there. In the back line, though, it's going to click sooner or later, and it's going to cause damage. It's just a matter of can they get any kind of front football from those set pieces, because we've already seen it steadily. So yeah, I don't think the Hurricanes will have much to worry about, but I think but I can't see them topping the New Zealand Conference the way that the Crusaders have started this season.
Well, you look at the competition as a whole, and you go, right, they weren't that convincing today, but they won easily enough. They picked up 5 points. The games that are going to determine what happens and where teams finish and who tops the New Zealand Conference and who gets those home quarterfinals. It's going to be the games against the Crusaders and those other New Zealand derbies. And if you can't match it up front with a team like the Crusaders, then your backs aren't going to have much opportunity to do anything. So, yeah, early days, and it's a long season, and we're all quick to make judgments of 2 games or 1 game, but there are signs there that set piece is a little creaky, and they probably need to look at that as a real area that needs addressing.
Yeah, but they've got their toy out the way early doors, which is good, and they've come away with at least 5 points from that. I can't remember if they got the losing bonus point or not last week, but they come away with 1 win and 1 loss. which isn't disastrous when you think that's the tour out the way, and they won't have the whole jet lag and that kind of stuff for later in the season. So thank you very much, sir, for your time. I will let you get onto your weekend's activities. But before that, tell everyone where they can get hold of you and the fantastic work you do with the Tribe Sports app.
Yeah, well, if you haven't got Tribe Sports app, you need to get it. So go into the Play Store or the App Store, search Tribe Sports app. You will find it. We've got live text commentary of all your Super Rugby, all your Six Nations as well coming up the final 2 weekends, as well as a heap of other sport, not just rugby. And if you want to engage with me on Twitter, then follow me at New York Nixon.
Cool. And if you're listening to the podcast or you're watching on YouTube, that link to that Twitter is down below in the comments. So if you're listening to podcast, please do subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and do give us a 5-star review. Other stars are available, but why would you want to do that? If you're watching the recording, my face is there, so please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I am live streaming about 7 nights a week at the moment on Super Rugby, so do check back in for all your best predictions and opinions, and you can see the latest video up there on the end of that finger instead. So thank you all for your time. I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and obviously you can come and find me on Twitter at DrivingMaul as well. And enjoy whatever rugby you're watching next weekend.